We're going to work with Doug and look at the imbalance in the floor of his pelvis and see how the musculature raveling around the bones have caused the constriction in the low back. When Doug first came to me a couple of years ago, his complaint was about his low back pain. Doug is an athlete, he's a triathlete, and he's very used to working this body very hard. Let's look. If I look down at Doug's foot, you see that this right foot, the toes are turned out a little bit to the right, the heel is coming in, and this arch is definitely more collapsed. If we look further up the shin, what we see is that because of this collapse, right here above the knee and the inner knee, because the quadricep muscles are turning around this femur bone, he's beginning to swivel around toward the right. He also has that classic pelvis thrust forward, which is very classic in Western industrialized society. The hips are thrust forward, which pushes the bones of the legs into the quadricep muscles. So there's really not a whole lot of space in this perineal circle area because this is where he is collapsed. Remember we talked about the clock. The hands of the clock are right in the middle of that circle. And he is dropped into this right side. We only have to look at the difference of the fabric here in this area and here in this area. He has practically no space to lift out and really get the optimum use of the psoas muscle. So we want to create more space. Doug wants to create more space. He wants to be able to use his inner legs. If you come around and we look at how the pelvis thrust forward and the dropping into the right side has affected the rest of his body, you can see that from the base of this buttock and the base of this buttock, there's a completely different story. Here, the base of this buttock is much lower. He's got more space right in here than he does in here. So if I exaggerate what's happening here, he's pushing this femur bone forward, and he is literally being pulled around toward the front of his body. We just look at these wrinkles, and if we liken the wrinkles to the fabric of the muscle on the bone, we can see how he has been pulled around. The upper torso is falling into his pelvis. And just look at the way the shirt lies on his body. And if I pick his shirt up and you look at his low back, there's a deeper indentation in here, and he's falling into this right side of his lumbar spine. So how will he make the space needed so that he can live further in the back body? Because he's thrusting his whole body forward. What I'm going to ask you to do, Doug, is to look at the center of your perineal circle and move 12 o'clock right behind the genitals, straight back through your legs. And as you watch him do that, he will open the area in between 5 and 4 and 6 and 5. So right now, you can see how the wrinkles in the pants are beginning to elongate. He's coming back in his back body. We live way too forward by pushing this pelvis in and tucking the tail under. There's no space for him to allow these legs to reach out of the pelvic floor. So we come back, and in the front, from the middle of the circle, You've opened up your 6 and your 5. Beautiful. And from the middle of the circle, you breathe out and right through the area between 12 and 1. A line of breath. It's like a beam of light breathing right out from the middle of the circle. Your breath is very, very important because once you make space, you need to fill the whole pelvic floor with breath. And as he begins to do that, we see the arch in his right foot begin to lift. It happens automatically. And so I'm going to ask you to take that heel now out to the right, to straighten out the foot so your Achilles tendon is right in line with the base of your buttock. And it's hard to find that space between big toe, second toe. And breathe the rib cage down and unravel between 12 and 11, making space in the root. We want to keep the leg bones in the back body. He wants to allow the legs to fall in the back so his whole low back, sacrum and lumbar open. He breathes the rib cage down. The middle of the circle reaches all the way down between his ankle bones. And then he wants to fill in the back